This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Six p.m.
I would like to make a motion for the convention to nominate City Councilor Omar Gomez as chair of the convention, school committee member Cynthia Kwasinski as vice chair, and city clerk Barbara Bombard as clerk of this convention.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara.
Connie Denham. Aye. Salem Derby is not here. Omar Gomez.
Aye.
J.P. Kaczynski.
Aye.
David Munier.
Aye.
Tom Peake.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Just a point of order, do we have to convene the meeting and call roll call?
Not yet.
We have to have a chair first.
We have to have a chair first.
Okay, thank you, aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
What do you call you? Okay, sorry. Maren Goldstein. Aye. Megan Harvey.
Aye.
Ben Hersey.
Aye.
Cindy Kwasinski.
Aye.
Nicole LaChapelle.
Aye.
Motion passes. Good evening. Welcome to the Easthampton City Council and School Committee Convention meeting. Today is May 10th, and this meeting is being recorded and broadcast by eMedia on Chatter Channel 193 and live streaming on their webpage, easthamptonmedia.org. Councilors and school committee members are gathering hybrid on the order extended by the governor until March 2025, which allow us to do so. Thank you. This meeting is now called to order. Barbara.
Okay.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Connie Denham. Here. Salem Derby. Omar Gomez.
Here.
J.P. Kaczynski.
Here.
David Munier. Tom Peake.
Here.
Brad Riley.
Here.
Dan Rist.
Here.
Owen Zaret.
Present.
Maren Goldstein.
Here.
Megan Harvey.
Here.
Ben Hersey.
Here.
Cindy Kwasinski.
Here.
Nicole LaChapelle.
Here.
In accordance with the Home Rules Charter, at Article 4, Section 4-1, discussion of the meeting dates and procedure to be used for the selection of the two new school committee members to fill vacancy until December 31st, 2023. The first thing that we have to set up is the rules of the convention. I will propose to follow Robert rules. We'll take a motion to follow Robert rules.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to follow Robert rules as the rules of the convention. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara.
Sorry. Omar Gomez.
Aye.
J.P. Kaczynski.
Aye.
David Munier. Tom Peake.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Maren Goldstein.
Aye.
Megan Harvey.
Aye.
Hersey.
Aye.
Cindy
Who's my go grab?
Kwasinski.
Aye.
Nicole LaChapelle.
Aye.
Connie
You
Denham.
on?
Aye. Aye.
I will ask everybody who's participating remote, can you please stay muted? The city charter anticipates situation like this one. Moving forward, we will follow the rules of the charter. When there are a vacancy on the school committee that occur within 6 months of the scheduled election, a joint body of the city council and the school committee shall solicit interest from citizens and jointly vote for qualified candidates that notify the city clerk of their interest and qualification to serve our city. Individuals wishing to serve on the school committee should send a letter of interest to the city clerk identifying their qualifications. Those qualifications are as follows. Applicant must be the age of 18 or over and be both residents and registered voters here in Easthampton. We plan, and we're going to schedule this, and we're going to set up as a committee. We're going to schedule the meetings. We plan on 3 joint meetings of the city council and the school committee. Different is tonight. It's a working session, which is why there will be no public speak portion. We're here this evening to lay out the process and the rules we will follow to make these important appointments. And the public solicit letters of interest forms our community. The deadline to submit those names is going to be May 15, and I have to bring it to the city clerk. The second is scheduled for May 18 that we have to approve after I finish with this reading, which will be here from all qualified applicants whose expression of interest and qualification were duly received by the city clerk. The third meeting is scheduled for May 31st at 6 p.m. at these chambers. Same with the second meeting, May 18, is going to be here at 7:15 at these chambers. The third meeting, which time we plan on voting for the new temporary members of the school committee. And before we get started, I want to offer a couple additional notes. Members of the City Council and School Committee may reach out the qualified applicants once they are identified to ask questions as they see fit prior to our meeting, May 31st meeting. But I remind all members of both the City Council and the School Committee to reach out individually as not to run as fault to open meeting law. We need to avoid open meeting law violation at any cost. This is a message for the potential candidates. Temporary school committee members choose through this process will need to stand for election in November if they wish to continue to serve on the school committee. The calendar for the November election is available at the city clerk webpage. If temporary members of the committee do not seek election, their term will end at the end of the year, calendar year. And if the two new members will decide to run for election, they're not going to appear as a candidate. Yeah, there's going to be a new candidate at the ballot. First, I will take a motion to schedule a public meeting, May 18 at 7:15 and May 31st at 6 p.m. at the chambers.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to schedule the next two meetings. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Barbara.
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Dave Munier. Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Garrett.
Aye.
Maren Goldstein.
Aye.
Megan Harvey.
Aye.
Ben Hersey.
Aye.
Cindy Kuzensky.
Aye.
Nicole LaChapelle.
Aye.
Connie Denham.
Aye.
The voting process. We, the charter stated really clear, we have to have a majority vote. That majority vote, we can use different type of voting. The proposal from some councilors is use ranked choice voting, and it will now take any consideration of how we're going to vote.
Mr. President,
Councilor Rist?
I just want to do a clarification. This is a multi-member body as defined by the charter. As such, unlike the city council, which has a majority vote, when we voted just now, it was a majority of those present and voting, not a majority of the council, say, which was what we did before when we were city council. That means if there's only 9 members here and they all vote, it's 5. 9 members present. It's not always 8 because there's 14 members of this convention. You understand that? That's the charter. And if you abstain, it's considered a no vote. So that reduces the majority. That's in when we're voting for something on the floor, a motion on the floor. What Chairman Gomez is talking about is ranked choice voting for the selection of the candidates. And the final, that's different. Just want to make it clear that that's different because all of the councilors, we've always had needed 5 members to vote majority. And I'm sure whatever the school committee doesn't have that separate rule. The charter was changed in 2010 to allow the city council to vote a majority of its membership, 5, so that major ordinances would be passed, say, by 5 votes, not just 3, because only 5 people were there. But here, it's a majority of those present and voting when we vote on anything. So we know that, and I bring that up because we're going to vote on whether we want to use ranked choice voting. And when we vote on that, there's, how many members are present, Barbara? There's 12 members.
13.
13.
That's only Salem, okay. So it's,
We Salem is 14.
yes, but he's not here, so it's 7-member majority unless somebody abstains.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Reds. Councilor Peak?
Is this a good time?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. So when this whole thing started going down, President Gomez and myself talked a little bit about the prospect of potentially using ranked choice voting. As many of you are aware, we used it the last time we had to fill a vacancy, and we thought that it went a lot smoother than I think the last time we had to do this for a school committee member, where there's like sequential rounds of going, not reaching a majority and going back at it. So we thought that that would be a good idea. I did prepare some slides that I can go through kind of quickly, if that pleases the group.
Does anyone have any questions before we go to the slideshow? Suggestions or
I think the
concerns?
slides should probably cover most of the questions people have, unless I did them
Councilor
badly.
Peak?
Let's see, now I just need to find which of my 1 million. Here we go. Okay, there we go. This is just sort of a quick thing, just as some background. In 2019, when we were in the middle of our charter review process, it was suggested by then City Council President Joe McCoy that, if this is something we believe in, we should use it for our own, in our own rules for if this, ever came up. So we did adopt a new rule 8B, which prescribes the use of ranked choice voting for filling council vacancies. In 2020, we amended that rule to basically account for what were to happen if there was a race like that and a tie were to occur. We built a couple tiebreaker provisions in because with smaller elections like this, that is a slightly more likely thing to happen than in like a citywide election. And also in 2020, we used this procedure to appoint Erica Flood to fill Councilor Bill Lynch's vacancy after his resignation. I think that for those of us that were on the council at the time, that was pretty popular. I think people thought it went pretty well. It was fairly transparent. We got a lot of help from one of our election wardens, Dan Gilbert, so he helped out a lot with this, and he's here today as well. So there was a thought that maybe this could be something that we would want to do. We went through this whole thing in 2019 when we voted on it, and then in 2021 when we used it in the mayoral election, but just as a refresher about ranked choice voting. The idea is that instead of selecting one candidate on your ballot, you rank the candidates in your order of preference from the candidate you think is the most qualified to the candidate that you think is the least qualified. And in the first round of count, it's just voting, I should say counting, each voter's vote, each member of this convention's vote would count for the candidate that they said was their first choice. And if one of those candidates gets a majority of the vote, then they win and it's over. But if no candidate wins a majority, then the candidate with the least votes is removed from the ballot. And anyone that had placed that candidate as their first choice vote, their vote will count for their second choice candidate in the next round. And that process repeats with a candidate being eliminated and your vote being moved to your next choice until somebody gets a majority. And that process sort of makes sure that there's not a lot of strategic voting that goes on, not a lot of people saying, oh, well, I love that person, but I don't think that they'll win, so I'll vote for this person, or two very similar people splitting a vote and somebody else coming in. So there's a lot of things that people really like about that. The one reason that we can't use the exact same procedure here is that we are electing or appointing two people instead of just one. So in a multi-winner race, there are many multi-winner races that use ranked choice voting. In fact, fun fact, a lot of cities in Massachusetts at one point used multi-winner ranked choice voting to elect their city councils, but some folks in the state decided that it elected too many diverse committees, so they took it away. You can look it up; it's a true fact. But the idea is that for the voter's perspective, it's the exact same thing. You rank your candidates from the one you like the most to the one you like the least. But when it comes to how to interpret those results when there's multiple winners, there's a few different ways in which it's done in different places. One of the most intuitive ways would be to just run the election until there's only 2 people left. I don't want to get into the mathematical technicalities of it unless anyone really wants to, but doing it that way can lead to problems if there's like one very, very popular candidate. It can lead just to some results that are not necessarily preferable. Another way to do it that's very popular in big cities that have, Cambridge does something similar to this, as does as Amherst when the state gets around to allowing them to do it, will be doing something like this. It basically sets it up in a way where the algorithm is set up to do proportional representation. So, if the body was largely split, one side would probably get one of their candidates, the other side would probably get their candidates. This is, in my opinion, the ideal situation. There's 2 problems I see. One is that the math behind it can be complicated, and this is a high visibility situation where I don't want to get too confusing with things. The second thing is that our charter does say majority vote, and I think that, if somebody wanted to, they could cast some questions about whether proportional representation is really a majority vote. So while I think that this is the sort of gold standard for...
I want to make a clarification about the majority vote. It's correct, the filling of the vacancy, Charles said that we have to have a majority vote. But in the definition of the majority vote, allows a multiple member to do our own rules.
You're completely correct there. We totally could. I just think that for the sake of simplicity, this maybe isn't the time to introduce a lot of the concepts of how this slightly more complex process works, but I do, just for the record, want to say that I think this is a great thing that everyone should do. So what we're proposing is what's called sequential ranked choice voting. And basically what that means is that you'd fill out a single ballot, just like those of us who were here for the Bill Lynch vacancy, it's the exact same thing that we do. And we run it through until a candidate is declared the winner, and then that candidate is the first winner. That candidate is then removed from the ballot. So it's like they were eliminated in another way. They're removed from the ballot. We then run through the process a second time. If your candidate, if the winning candidate was your first choice, then the second time through, your vote will count for your second choice. We run it through that way, and again, it's the same ballot. You only need to vote once, but we just run the ballots twice, and the 2 candidates that win will be our winners, if we agree to do it this way. This method is really good at selecting multiple candidates who each have sort of broad support among the body. It'll really almost mathematically almost always give you the 2 candidates who have the broadest support from among this body. And in that way, it's somewhat similar to what we currently do with block voting in our at-large elections, except for that it doesn't have as many problems about bullet voting and things like that. So this is basically what I'm proposing. Just in terms of the technical details, if we were to go this route, once again, voters in the convention will only need to fill out a single ballot, which will be used for both elections. Voters will be able to vote in person or remote. I've spoken a bit with Dan, who's offered that he could help facilitate this process. He is, under the supervision of our city clerk. So votes would be tabulated, by Dan. And then the rules regarding ties and other unlikely but possible situations like that will be the same as the proposal I have in front of you all. Uses the same exact language for a tie or anything like that. That is what we voted to do for Rule 8B prior to the last time we did something like this. So that is my presentation.
Thank you, Councilor. If this body choose to use ranked choice voting, Dan volunteered his time and expertise to be here our last meeting to recollect the votes. I just want to remind everybody that the votes are going to be public.
Okay.
No secret ballots, and the public will know how we vote. Any questions to Councilor? I will see Mayor first.
Yeah, just a point of procedure. When we decide how the votes will go for this convention, does that set a precedent or a practice for future conventions, or is it just for this?
Each convention will have their own rules.
Excellent, thank you.
I think I saw Councilor Riley first.
So I just want to be clear when we say that the votes are public, will the voters in this community be able to see the actual documents that we cast our votes on? Because I don't want them to have the tally number.
The answer is yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Councilor Rist.
Which leads me to, first, clarification on what Tom said. We're going to vote once. Ranking each candidate.
Yes.
Then they're going to be tabulated a number of times in a sequential way by Dan with the assistance of Barbara. Okay. Now that question about how, I would like to know how we're going to show our ballots to the public as we do it, or are you talking about after the fact
I think
in public record? How can that happen? And I'd like to know how that.
We're going to have a ballot in front of us.
Sorry.
We're going to have a ballot in front of us.
Yeah.
We're going to rank everybody.
Paper ballot.
Paper ballot, yes, we're going to have it. Then it's going to have, how you call that?
Scanner?
No, he's going to have, yes, whiteboard. And in the whiteboard, it's going to be in paper because we're going to keep a record of that too. And we're going to do the tabulation in front of everybody.
So a whiteboard will number each, do exactly
We're going to
what
have the
we're
name of
doing.
the candidate
And then you're going to also copy it in paper as well.
So,
before. Dan, do you want to go to the podium and help us with this? And please state your name and address and.
Hi, everyone. Dan Gilbert, 48 Parsons Street. Happy to answer any questions about this. It would be just to possibly preempt some of those a little bit. It would be very similar to what we did for the city council in 2020. It would look very similar. I used a sort of a spreadsheet-like interface, and I could walk through every step, and I would plan to do it the same way, so everybody sees what the process is. This would also create a record that could easily be printed out or distributed, and everything input to this would also. I know the last time we did it, it was all remote, and so we did a complicated little email dance, but we would be able to do the same thing via email for remote members. And then in-person members, we could do paper ballots with counselors' names on them and their rankings.
Well, they should. Can I?
Just one second. Any school committee of before you, because you already asked. I just want to see if anyone else want to have any questions. See, Councilor Rist.
This is a clarification. I like this. In other words, you're going to take my paper ballot and type it in. Well, let me finish my thought, and then you can say no or
Go
no.
ahead.
You're going to take the paper ballot and type it in on a spreadsheet so that everybody can see that spreadsheet. It's going to say Dan Rist. It's going to say candidate 1, candidate 2, et cetera.
You want to see?
No, well, that's up to the chair. But all I'm saying is I like this because not only are you showing it to the public through the remote situation we have here, but you're also getting a paper record of it.
Yes.
That's what I mean, right? Is that wrong?
Is this committee preferred to do it that way, or we want to do it? We're going to have the ballot in front of us, and we will announce publicly how we vote to then, and then we'll take the votes.
And then hand them down to.
Whichever way you want.
Yes. Okay. We should do that. Let's vote by voice, so that everybody will know exactly how we vote. Councilor Denham.
I just had a clarification of, we were talking whiteboard and he was saying spreadsheet, so I just wanted to make sure we were.
Yes, it's the same.
Yeah, so what I would be doing is we could do this with a whiteboard. I think it would be a lot easier to do it with the spreadsheet, because we can also share it remotely to anybody. We can put it up on the screen here. It has some nice checks on it, where I can see if I've made any mistakes, everybody else can see if any mistakes are made, and immediately flag them. You can easily confirm, yes, that is indeed my vote. The public can confirm that, you can confirm it, so.
Yeah, I was just imagining a whiteboard and then trying to like,
Yeah,
how are we
yeah.
gonna
No.
show?
That's why I asked the
Right, like-
No, I would much prefer to do it on the computer.
Yeah, that's great.
But it's the kind of process, unlike
Let me clarify something first.
what Councilor Peak mentioned with the proportional representation thing, where it involves a lot more math. This is a process that does not involve any math. I mean, basic counting, but beyond that, the spreadsheet isn't doing any
Calculations,
algorithms or
yeah.
calculating. It's all manually done. by
Did I
the
answer your question, Councilor Denham?
Yep, it was the whiteboards, but.
Yeah, for transparency to whoever is participating remote, that person has to send an email to the city clerk, and we're not gonna start the voting before we get the emails. We need to get the email in first, and after we get all the emails and everybody vote, that's when we're gonna start telling everybody how we vote. Councilor Kuczynski.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dan, I was so happy to see you here tonight because you guided us through the last time this was done for the city council election. I kind of heard you say that you might have a short presentation on how it runs, like a couple of minutes. Is that something you're prepared to do? I really think that would be helpful for the public and for the members who haven't seen this on operation, and would be a great refresher for those of us who had, if that would please Mr. President.
Do you have it?
Yeah, I don't have a presentation as much as I can walk you through an example of how it would go using random data.
Sounds great to me.
We'd need to take a sec
Oh, second.
to get my computer hooked up to whatever the screen is, but I'm happy to do that. It takes about, I think would be less than 5 minutes.
We're here for that. But while you're setting that, Councilor Sarrett, do you have a question?
Yes, Mr. President.
You can set up.
I just wanted to clarify, just so I could understand, you said there would be a voice vote. So just to clarify the order that would go, we would fill out our ballots and then we would read them off?
Correct.
Okay, good.
Correct. Any other questions?
How do I?
Does anyone can help, please? So, and I know Councilor is going to be there, but I will.
Can I, Mr. President, can he be a co-host so he can share?
As soon he log in, yes.
All right, so you're gonna do,
And I know the councilor is working with that, but I have a few questions about the second and the third meeting.
his website and get out.
Second meeting, we're going to allow the candidates to talk to us.
Oh, should I?
And we have to set up the time. We're going to allow them to talk 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes, and we have to vote for it because we have to set up the rule for that too. I will proposing they should have 5 minutes,
I don't.
but I'm open to listen any suggestion from any members.
Easthampton website.
Anyone? Councilor Sarrett?
I think 5 minutes is reasonable. I mean, could be short, but longer than 5 is long. So I think that's a fair amount of time for someone to try to propose
Well, I need
a
internet
platform.
first, so I have-
Thank you, Councilor Sarrett. And hey, guys,
Oh, can I do city guest? And the password.
can you please? Thank you.
Excuse me, can we have the password for city guests?
I just shared it.
It's right on the front of that, of the laptop.
Ah,
You have it,
It's right by
Mr.
the key.
President.
Do you send that text?
I sent I actually connected. It asked me if I would allow Dan's,
Oh, he's in.
yeah, he's in,
He's in.
yeah.
He's in?
The-
He was in through his phone.
No,
Oh. Okay, we wait.
I'm not on Zoom.
So let's keep going with the process. So it's gonna be 5 minutes, and the recommendation that I want to propose to, first original was no questions, but I think we should have 3 questions. And with those 3 questions, we set it up today. And the 3 questions should be exactly the same for everybody. Councilor Peak?
I guess I hear what you're saying there in terms of like fairness or whatever, but I do sort of wonder like what would happen if there was a person who were to say something that I really wanted them to follow up on. Like if they were to say something and I was like, could you please clarify what you mean by this?
I think clarification would be allowed.
But isn't that a question?
No, that's a clarification. I think clarification is if I say something that I need more information, I think I'm okay allowing that, clarifications, for the statement that the candidate will speak for 5 minutes. But I'm opening to see if the members of this convention will have 3 questions to the candidate. It's up to us to set all the rules. If we decide now, we give it 5 minutes, and that will be it. Mayor LaChapelle and then Councilor Riley.
Just on the statement, and then for clarification purposes, I think also clarification should include not only a clarifying question of what was stated, but also we should be mindful of potential candidates and their use of semantics as well as ethnicity and culture, that words can have a double meaning or whatnot that might not be familiar to the members of the group, and clarification of that statement should be allowed exactly for that rather than it be a question. That's how I would see it. And then the 3 questions, from what I understand, would be separate
Correct.
from clarification on the...
Correct. Is if we decide to have 3 questions.
I was just, yeah.
So if we decide not to have any questions, just the 5 minutes and clarification from the council of the school committee members, and that will be it. Councilor Riley?
So the only challenge that I have with us proposing questions, so the first is that I don't know that doing that tonight is enough time to ascertain what the correct 3 questions should be that we're asking, but then also to take into consideration the vast homogeny of this group, and that the types of questions that we might deem to be appropriate to be asked could disproportionately hinder certain candidates if they aren't of the same philosophy or the same background as us. That's my only concern.
Okay.
I would personally like them to have the full amount of time to be able to present themselves however they feel best to present themselves.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else? Councilor Sarrett, sorry.
I am of the mind, I think it's great to ask the candidates questions, but I think the task of trying to come up with 3 questions tonight that we can all agree on is daunting, and I think that I would leave it up to the counselors to ask the candidates questions once they've presented themselves, especially in light of we don't know what each individual candidate may say or present, and that may lead to questions that we have for them individually. Certainly, we could ask those afterwards in the setting of if we did agree upon certain series of questions to ask them. But I think that's just a very complicated task to put in front of us right now.
Okay, I'm just making the question. I'm just asking what the convention want to do. Councilor,
I think it'd be better to be able to contact individually, one at a time. We can't violate open meeting laws.
Yep.
The candidates, after we listen to them, and I want a clarification on one candidate's statement.
Okay.
I just call them. I think that's better than trying to come up with a series of questions.
perfect. Councilor Denham?
There's something wrong with that cable, sorry.
I think for 5 minutes, the only thing I want to know is why do you want to be on the
Okay.
school committee, right? Like, I think that's the obvious. I would like to know why they want to go to the beach this weekend, right? But I think we're trying to narrow it down and give a focus of.
That's okay, I'm just throwing
Yep.
stuff here to talk about
I mean,
it.
I don't want it to be so broad, but
No,
I think
that's
we want
fine.
like, why do you want to be on? city
So
council?
5 minutes with clarification questions. That will be good. Anyone else? Who was that? Marion?
So I guess the one question that does come to mind beyond the sort of general question of why do you want to be on the school committee, we right now have just set up a process that the very first thing that these candidates are going to be doing is coming into interviews of interim superintendent candidates and voting on, participating in our general vote on the superintendent position. So I think that there might be value to having a question around that, because that is going to be one of the very first things that they're going to be doing, and it's going to be having significant impact on the school committee and the school district. So there might be something that's more clarifying around that we could ask.
Anyone? Mayor LaChapelle?
I agree with Member Goldstein. I think that what we were looking at for the candidates who might apply for this, we had 4 meetings left, and they were important, but we weren't looking at passing a budget. The impactfulness of picking a superintendent, I think, it's exceptional, and it should be a question. I mean, I would be fine with it being the only question, because that's something that I would really want to know, and I think the public would want to know too.
Taking notes about the question. Perfect. The members agree with that? Councilor Riley?
Yeah, so just to kind of, I guess, maybe backtrack a little bit on what I was saying before, I think that's a perfectly suitable question to ask, because there is nothing else to that question other than the task that is ahead, and that's for anybody. So I think that's fair. So I think those kinds of questions would totally be okay. So I'll take back what I said earlier.
Thank you, Councilor.
Yeah.
So, Councilor Sarat.
I think that's a good point. I would just want to understand a little bit more exactly what the wording of that question would be.
That's something to work out.
You just have to do it.
I think we have, we know exactly that we're going to ask for the superintendent interim, so we figured out the questions for that day.
I just did.
Yeah, but the question is going to be based on the interim of the superintendent. So then we're going to figure out how we're going to exactly.
I think you need to do it tonight.
Can you repeat that, Mr.?
No, we don't. You don't have to tonight.
You need to tell the people as soon as possible.
No, the question.
Aren't you going to let them know ahead
because
of time?
it's clarification, like at the same. The candidates are going to know that we're going to ask them about the interim. Councilor, you want to say something?
I am confused.
Maybe it's because you was doing that.
Well, yes, but also because we're talking about a single question.
Excuse me, you have to mute it. Thank you.
Just put the little button on the.
There you go.
Oh, now.
So the single question will be about, can you repeat what you just said? I wasn't able to understand what you just said about the interim superintendent.
We have to formulate a question about the interim.
Okay.
Right. We don't have the questions tonight, but the candidates will know that's going to be a question about the interim. We're going to give you 5 minutes. We're going to have clarifications of this statement, where they're going to speak for 5 minutes. We're going to be everybody's going to be allowed to make clarification questions about that statement. There's going to be only one question related to the interim position at the school. We can set up the question now if anyone want to have any idea how to formulate the question. Councilor Peak.
Do we want to jump back to Dan's thing real quick?
Let's finish this.
Do we want to finish this?
Let's finish this.
Okay. In that case, I don't know that necessarily I'm super excited about 13 people workshopping some questions tonight. Maybe we should just say, have them make a statement. We can, and then we can follow up with them if we have any any questions.
And I agree. I get that. And the only question that probably, if they don't cover that question of the statement, is going to be about the interim.
Well, then can't we just ask them to make sure that they cover that in their statement?
There you go.
Yeah, if they want, if they don't cover it, we ask. I think that's simple. I don't think any issue with that. Chairwoman Kuczynski?
So, to make it easier, why don't we just, as our opening, explain to people you're going to have 5 minutes to tell us why you want this position. And during that time, we would like you to talk about the search for the interim superintendent and leave it that way. So we've given them, 2 questions that we want in our opening statement. Does that make sense?
I agree with it, but what about if the candidate didn't say anything about it?
That's on them. I'm sorry.
On them.
Okay, I just want to be clear and fair that if that didn't happen, no one is going to make a question about that.
Unless we ask for clarification.
Councilor Sarah.
In which case.
Can we create some sort of, can we have some sort of consensus around clarifying questions in terms of creating some sort of equitable space for either a time period or the number of follow-ups, so that, for instance, one candidate isn't barraged with like 10 questions while another one gets 2?
We have a rule for city council that we can adopt for this convention. At the city council, by rules, councilors are allowed to make only 2 questions. And it's a limit of 3 minutes per question. We barely use it, to be honest, but we have it. We can set up those rules for the convention too. We can set up two questions for each person who want to make the questions, and then what we're going to allow the person to give it 2 minutes, because we give it the 5 minutes to the statement. We don't know how many candidates we're going to have. We give you 2 minutes to answer. I think that would be good.
Could we?
Councilor Peak. Yeah, I saw her. Yeah, I saw you, Megan.
Could I maybe make the suggestion, given the sheer number of people here, that it would be 1 question per member of the convention?
No, if we have to be, I'm going to be super transparent and honest. If we have to be here until 2 a.m. because it's a bunch of questions, I'm okay with it. That's why we run for office. But that's my opinion. But if we choose to only make 1 question, that's what we decide. But that's why we are having this conversation tonight. Let Megan first, because everybody speaks first. So, Megan.
Yes, a point of clarification about the question about the interim superintendent. Are we asking about the content sort of that search? Or are we thinking that we would ask a question like, here are the dates that have been selected. Can you address whether or not you'll be available to conduct interviews and to vote? Which type of question are we thinking about?
Who want to answer that? Because I think that's a school committee process more than us. Anyone from the school committee? Marian?
Well, I mean, when I was thinking about asking that question, I think that it was more, not logistical question, it would be more process-oriented, potentially. But I also am fine with hearing that, instead of us having a follow-up 1 question that we're asking every person that's presenting themselves, instead, it's just clarified that in that 5-minute introduction, they should be telling us why they want to be a school committee member and and again, we can phrase it how we want to phrase it, but, what do they think about, or what are they hoping to achieve, or what is a primary thing for them that they want to look for in a superintendent, an interim superintendent? I don't know. I don't have the exact question formulated, but I think if we have those 2 questions sort of posted as a part of what we're going to be asking them to present on in their 5 minutes, I think we can leave it that way and not have a follow-up question to clarify. But I do think we should still have it formulated to some degree so that everybody does understand what they're being asked to include in that 5 minutes.
Thank you. Megan, any other question? No? Councilor Denham, I saw you.
Yeah, no, I just want to be clear how I understand a clarifying question. It would be hypothetically, someone says, I served on the school committee in the past. My clarifying question would not be, can you tell me how that experience impacted your thinking on education? My clarifying question would be, what were the years that you were on city council, or on
At school committee.
on school committee, right? Like, I think that's the clarifying question. It's not digging in to get more details, because
Correct.
I don't think that's clarifying.
Correct.
Because I think those are the questions that we would ask in our individual meetings, right? And I think it's points of, I'm confused because I didn't realize that person was on, whatever, right? So I think that's the scope of what a clarifying question would be for us,
Right.
in my opinion.
Counselor?
I like what Counselor Denham said just then. I think clarifying questions as to clarity of what was presented. But how do we write a rule right now that suggests that we can't ask as individuals more in-depth questions about the candidates?
I think that will be my job, to identify that.
Your job will be to follow whatever the convention
Correct.
says to
No,
do.
correct, I know.
So I think tonight we should say clarifying questions should be only about facts presented that evening by the candidate. Not, what did you think about your last school committee, and how much
Yep.
better was it than this one, or whatever. If you want to get into the details of, say, a candidate's experiences, whether in the public sector or not, that's the individual conversation you should have. The clarifying question, by rule, if we make this rule, should be about the facts presented. I was on the school committee. When was that? That's facts presented. So do we see what I'm trying to get at here?
Yeah.
Don't get into too much into character, into experiences, into opinion. If you want that, you go to them individually.
Thank you. First, let's start making the process better. Everybody agree with 5-minute statement? Less or more? 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Take a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to have the statement be 5 minutes or less.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there the discussion? Seeing none, Barbara.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Dave Munier. Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Maren Goldstein.
Aye.
Megan Harvey.
Yes.
Ben Hersey. Cindy Kuzensky.
Aye.
Nicole LaChapelle.
Aye.
Connie Denham.
Aye.
Omar Gomez.
Aye, motion passes. Councilor Riz, do you want to make a motion making a clarification about the clarification?
I'll move that clarifying questions should be limited to facts presented by the candidate and not involve personal experiences or other opinion-related
Can I have
subjects.
these written down, please?
Oh, boy.
Yep.
You want me to repeat the motion? I move that we allow for clarifying questions that can be only set as
Facts.
facts presented by the candidate and not involve
Opinion.
opinion or personal experience. Does that make sense? No?
Repeat it again.
What?
You got it?
No.
He's gonna write it down. Oh.
Just-
Right, sorry.
I'm trying to think.
I saw you, Megan. Just 1 second.
Well, I made a motion, but now I don't know what to do.
Well,
We don't have a motion.
You don't have a
He doesn't
second.
No, we don't have a motion. Councilors, please.
I'll write the,
I don't have a motion yet.
Want me to write it?
I'll make a motion.
Just 1 second until Councilor Riz write the motion.
Well, Tom had a question, Mr. President.
Councilor Peak?
do you think if they make a statement that's not strictly a fact, if they make a statement, it's my opinion that blah, 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 should we be able to say, could you please expand upon what you mean by that? I feel like that's within the scope. If we're responding to a statement, not just a fact, but a statement that they make during their statement, I think that that should be fine, personally.
If a candidate said that that's his opinion, I think you're correct. We're going to be allowed to do that.
But we should only respond to statements.
Statement of what the candidate would
They
say.
make.
Correct.
So not necessarily, this is, I think, important because facts, you can get really semantic about what a fact is, but like, I think that we should be responding to their statement.
Correct.
To things that they say during their statement. Okay.
Thank you for the clarification, Councilor Peak. I think that was
point.
good. Yeah. Mayor LaChapelle?
Just about hypothetically, about any motion that Councilor Rist may write, the clause at the end about not opinion or whatnot, I think that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, I'm about to eliminate that.
Yeah, and to eliminate, make it clear. I would also remind the council and school committee that the way we interview for any other professional position, I understand this is elected, is that all the same questions are asked of every candidate.
Right.
And then they add, like, they elaborate on, and my priority would be, third graders get ice cream sandwiches, which now they don't, so.
And that's why I was asking if we can have the same question for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I was
I am a
thinking.
little worried
I was
about
thinking exactly the same.
Yes.
Megan?
Councillor Peak actually asked my exact question. I can imagine a variety of statements being made and potentially needing clarification on them.
Thank you, Megan.
It sounds like we can do that, so that's great.
Councilor Sarret.
But I guess does this bring us back to the fact that we can make notes of statements that the candidate makes in the public forum and just follow up with them after the meeting? I think I agree with Mayor LaChapelle that potentially creates a scenario where even unintentionally a candidate might be asked a question, asked different questions, and so there's a disparity in what they're being asked. Well, I agree that someone might make a statement, we might say, what do they mean by that? We could just ask them afterwards. I'm of two minds of this, but I think the mayor makes an interesting point.
Councilor Peak?
Should we just not have the follow-up questions?
Thank you. I was about to say that.
It seems like this is getting a little...
Councilor, the process, councilors.
It just seems like this is getting a little overly complicated. We all know that we're planning to speak with these candidates in the meantime. If there's questions about the process, maybe we...
So keep it 5 minutes?
They speak for 5 minutes, we say thank you, and then we can talk to them after if we have any questions.
So
Chairwoman Kosinski?
do we need to make a motion to have this same opening statement? What I wrote down is, why are you interested in this position? And please discuss your thoughts about participating in the interim superintendent interviews. For example, what are you looking for in that candidate? And leave that for our opening statement for everybody and then just let them go?
They should say
I prefer the candidates say, use their 5 minutes anyhow they want it. Like when they're running for office. You run for office, you have a public statement, and you convince the people who's going to vote for you that you're the right person. If they want to include whatever in the statement, it's up to them, and convince us that that person is the right person to fill up the position. But that's my opinion. Anyone else? Marion?
So, I guess speaking again to the comment that in an interview process, we generally have all the exact same questions for that same person. I just want us to take a step back and say this whole process of then each of us individually following up and asking whatever question we want to have or having whatever conversation we want to have, which is non-public, non-transparent, that is like no other process that I've seen for this kind of a position. And that just seems, that's a concern.
You are correct, and the concern is legit, but I just want to make the difference that this is elected position. It's our job to vote for someone of the community to represent the community and the school committee. Interviewing a department head, like the superintendent, I feel is totally different than elected officials. It's totally different. I think it's up to the candidate to convince us that that person is the right person for us to vote and make them the next school committee member.
Would you mind if I follow up with an example, though? So, and I'm just going to do as an extreme, okay? But as an extreme to explain this, let me say I'm listening to somebody talk and I hear their 5-minute presentation and that sparks a question into my mind. And so then afterwards I go back and I'm one-on-one, I ask that question of like, well, I hear that actually you want to, one of your comments made me think about this and I want to ask you a question. And the person then comes out and says, yes, I actually do want to come out and get all these books removed from our libraries. I'm the only one that's going to have that piece of information going into the vote. Because I'm the one who heard a question and followed up with that question to get that information. And yet that's going to be a very important piece of information that isn't going to be shared with anybody else on that vote. It seems just process-wise
if you make
very
it
confusing.
If you I agree with you only if you talk to that person in person. Because if you send an email, we have a record and you can forward that email to everybody. So it's always a way to do it publicly. Sending an email to everybody with the answer, that's no open meeting law violation. Because you make a question, it's right there, and we have a copy. I know it's tricky, but it's a way to track it. And I get it. And again, I'm open here to have the next meeting with the 3, 4, 5 candidates. I don't know how many we got. And we have 20 questions. We throw the 20 questions. We're going to be here until 2 a.m. I'm okay with it. It's up to the convention to decide that. Mayor LaChapelle?
I mean, I looked at that proposal that you were talking about individuals and can have individuals of this convention can reach out to candidates. I would bring up the fact that I appreciate that you said that out loud, because indeed that is not an open meeting law violation. It is within our individual and convention capacities to do so. And I like that you said it, so we're not in the process and somebody says, I saw X talking to this candidate at Tandem. Totally allowed. I like that the public knows that. They have the opportunity to do the same, and it's up to the candidate. And a candidate may say they don't want to talk. They could say whatever they want. I do see what Member Goldstein. I mean, I can't say I disagree with that, and it does worry me, especially our past experience of late. I don't know how. I don't know how to deal with that in such a short procedure. And with the interim schedule the way it is, I'm concerned. I guess I just want to hear from the candidates and how they're going to present and make the case of why they should get one of our votes sooner rather than later. And I would expect members of this convention to ask individual questions or, have a cup of coffee or whatnot. But I really like the idea that was stated tonight.
Thank you. Councilor Peak, and then Councilor...
Yeah. A few people have pointed out that how different this is than any normal hiring process that we want to do, and they're completely right. But this is a political process, not an HR process. It's a different... I think, JP, you were the first one to make that distinction to me on something where I said, well, that's not how we normally do it. And you said, well, that's because this is a political process. So it's different. It's a different thing. And it's a thing that we're doing in lieu of an election because we need these people to serve, and we don't want to spend $10,000 on an election for people who are going to serve 5 months. So this is what it is. The way I see it, I don't really think that we're going to necessarily, I mean, we could sit here and workshop a series of questions that we ask everyone. But the way I say it really comes down to we either are allowed to ask questions to the person there, and what that's probably going to mean is all sorts of questions, some of which are neither fair nor appropriate, and that's just part of the political process, and you need to deal with the messiness of that, or we don't ask any questions. And to be honest, I'm fine with either, because I think one of those options is going to lead to a situation where we get to know more about the candidates, but also is likely to subject them to our own priors. And then the other one is going to be more fair, but it's also going to potentially allow for certain things that we'd want to know to fly under the radar because nobody asked a question. I don't think there's a correct answer here, but we have to just make a choice. Do we want to question the candidates at the time or not. And I think that if we're going to question them, then, you know, I mean, we could talk about all these things, but we're just going to get mired in semantics if we put too many limitations on it. I think it's kind of like, should they come prepared to answer any and all questions that we might have, with the full knowledge that those questions might not be fair and might not be fairly applied? Or are we not asking questions? I feel like we got to just make a choice there. We're going to pick a road, and neither road is perfect.
So Councilor Riss and then Councilor Kwasinski.
Councilor Peak, you took the words right out of my mouth. We do not want to put a candidate through a cross-examination, which can be inappropriate, unfair, depending on our own feelings toward that candidate if we have prior knowledge of them. That's happened. We don't need to do that. I am strongly inclined to let questions be individual. Now, I know most of you, and I think you're all going to be asked fair questions, but the individual candidate may not think they're fair, may not think they're appropriate. So why go down that road? This is a 5-month candidate. They'd have to subject themselves to the voters. I feel individual questions are appropriate, and what the mayor said is appropriate. You can have a coffee with somebody, ask them, why do you want to be on this? If you find out something that's difficult, how that's presented to the full committee has to be information and cannot be debated online, but it can be presented as information. That scenario that Maren brought up, you can present that as information. But I'd be careful about that because it becomes he said, she said, and all that. So I don't think we should have a cross-examination in this. I would be very much against that. I'd rather see individuals, because I remember how that went down a bad way one point in our careers here. So,
Councilor Kwasinski.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're talking about whether or not to ask questions of candidates and whether we think that helps the process for the public. I think we all want to be transparent about that process. We all want the questions to be in the open. So the idea of meeting for coffee with somebody or calling them up and having questions that tend to be private questions that the public doesn't hear the answers to, whether or not we care to share those answers, kind of troubles me on the one hand. So I think if we're looking for an open process, we should answer questions. If we're looking at the general election process and what the public does during the general election, they ask candidates to speak to them. They ask candidates questions, whether you go knock on a door and you're answering questions for individuals or groups or in front of a camera. It's kind of the political process, as Tom alluded to earlier. And that's really what this is. I think people who look for this position ought to be able to field questions or get used to fielding questions. So I think it's part of the open, transparent process. So the idea of going to an email because it meets as efficient as it may be and as good as it may be, it's still kind of, well, is somebody going to ask for that email and to get the answer, and where's something asked? I think if we just lay it on the table, we ask our questions, we try to be fair and constructive about the questions, it'll help the public to understand where we're coming from and where the candidate is coming from. And I think it'll help us with our decision. So I would encourage you to say yes to questions. Hopefully we can keep them brief, and we won't be here till 2.
I agree with what Councilor Kwasinski said. I just want to make a clarification again. If you see any of these members talking to a candidate privately, that's allowed. Just want to be clear with everybody, with the public and with us, just in case that's going to be allowed. If we don't have more than 7 members, there's no open meeting law violation. So that will be allowed. I would encourage individuals ask questions or sit down with get a coffee. That will be. I just want to be clear that that's allowed. At this moment, I think the conversation is great, listening every single point. What I got is kind of the reading the room is we want to make questions. So now I will allow probably only 1 questions per member, and I think that will recover what this committee is looking for, to clarification, and one question per member. And that person will give it 3 minutes to answer. But I think one question should be
Point of
good.
clarification? Or point of clarification. So you're saying one question per member of the joint convention for any
Each candidate.
Each
Yes.
candidate?
Yes.
Good.
Yes.
I'm in agreement.
Mr.
Gonzalez, yeah.
I agree with that because it takes away a little bit of the cross-examination because it's one question. So if it's appropriate, I'd like to make a motion.
Before making a motion, any, Ben?
I think it would be useful to ask questions, and if we had to be here till 2 a.m, that I suppose we could do that. But I'm also compelled by the idea of letting the candidate, the person, present their case in 5 minutes, no questions, and that's that. Because this isn't a 2-year term. This is a 5 or 6 month. They're being appointed for a short run. So, I want to hear what they have to say. Let it stand. It's open. It's public. It's transparent, and then, go from there.
We already vote for the 5 minutes. We can make a motion for one question, and if it fails.
I'd like to make a motion that the convention allow each member of the convention to ask each candidate one question following their statement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to allow only one question for member of this body to make a question to the candidate. Any further discussion? Marion?
Point of clarification. That one question, though, that we write for ourselves to ask has to be the same question that we ask to every single candidate.
No.
Not necessarily.
This
No,
isn't an HR.
counselors? No.
She's asking me.
No. I know, but just wait. Counselor,
I apologize, Mr. President.
thank you.
I don't believe so, Maren, because this isn't an HR process. We're asking, they make a statement, we ask a question. Maybe the statement refers to something they make in the statement or something we know about the candidate. But as we've said before, it has to be about anything. We should not limit the questions. So this is very simple. You get one question, whatever you want to ask. Because this isn't an HR process, as Councilor Peak brought up, it's totally different.
Counselor Riley?
So, just because there's a lack of a better term, but I want to consider the opportunity of a poison pill to this question process. So that is, if we get, say, 15 applicants, then I mean, we're talking hours upon hours upon hours to get through that process. And if we're going to do the questions, it has to be fair for every single person. So is there a number, let's say, where we say, as an example, if we have more than 7 applicants, then we do the 5 minutes, no questions asked. And if it's under that, then we can ask questions. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm thinking like the meeting itself is already starting in the evening. So between 14 members, one question from 14 members plus 5 minutes, we could easily grab an hour and a half per person. And then, we're going into tomorrow before, or maybe we can have extra meetings. I don't know what that looks like, but I just want to throw that out there as an opportunity. And I think right now there's a variable that's unknown, which is whatever we decide tonight, we won't actually know the total number of applicants until after the decision has been made.
Councilor Denham?
I feel like we should what are the 3 questions we want to ask? I'm sorry, for how many times we repeat each other and how many times we're going to repeat the questions that is going to happen or ask further clarifying questions. I just feel like we already have a process by which we have the ability to go and talk to them. I think we should what are the 3 points or 4 points or 5 points, but to sit here and to think and to go by, and quite frankly, I might have the same question as Dave, right? And so then we're like, now I have to think of a question, right? I just think it's...
You don't have to make a question.
Well, that's a helpful thing, but I also just think, I think we're getting at trying to figure out more things that are necessary for a process when we already have the ability to speak to them. So I think it's what are the 3 or 4 themes that we want to hit on and ask those questions, and if there's clarifying questions that we have after, let's go meet with them. I think that's a fair process. The community has been able to listen to kind of these particular viewpoints, but for us to sit through and then go down the thing of all of these things, I just think they could literally spend 5 minutes just asking my question, right? And I don't want to be negative of like, oh, well, that's helpful for the community. I think that's going to be an exhausting process. Because I don't think people are going to want to be here till 3 a.m. listening to all of these things, and we might be here till 6 a.m., right? Because we're going through. So I just think I don't think it has to be exhausting. I think what are the points we want to hit, and that's fair.
Okay, I just want to remind everybody, we'll have a motion and a second about the making only one question per member.
Thank you.
Councilor Sarat.
I just wanted to quickly address Councilor Riley's question. Just like any other set of rules that we present, they could always be suspended. So if we showed up and there were 15 people here, that would be awesome, by the way. We could just vote to suspend.
Thank you for the
rules.
clarification. Councilor Peak.
Mr. Chair, we do have a motion and a second on the table. I move that we call the question.
Second on the motion to call the question.
We have a motion and a second to call the question.
Robert says it can't be debated.
Cannot, that's what, Barbara.
Is this on the motion or
You
to
read,
call the
you read
question?
the motion and then we vote.
Okay, Dave Munier,
Nope,
what?
read the motion.
Is this?
No, it's to call the question.
Yeah, this
We're
is to
called
call
the
the
question.
That's
Oh,
all
the
it
vote
is.
is to vote, sorry.
Okay, this is to call the question.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay, Dave Munier.
Aye.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rist.
Aye.
Owen Zaret.
Aye.
Maren Goldstein.
Aye.
Can't believe I remember.
Megan Harvey.
I'm sorry, can you clarify what we're calling to question, what this exactly means? I'm sorry.
This is just to vote, to move ahead with the
End
question. To end debate.
No, sorry, I had my hand up, so I'm voting no. I had one question for the group.
No, she say no.
Okay, all right. Ben Hersey.
Aye.
Cindy Kwizinski.
Aye.
Nicole LaChapelle.
No.
Connie Denham.
No.
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Did I vote?
Aye.
Yes.
What did I vote? I voted aye.
3 no's.
Motion passes. Okay,
We're just going to vote.
yeah, Barbara,
Okay, this is on Dan's motion.
just for one question
allow
per member.
Each member of the convention, one question per candidate.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. Tom Peak,
Aye.
Brad Riley,
Aye.
Dan Rist,
Aye.
Owen Zaret,
Aye.
Maren Goldstein,
No.
Megan Harvey,
No.
Ben Hersey,
No.
Cindy Kwizinski,
Oh, gee.
Say
I would
pass.
say aye.
Aye.
Nicole LaChapelle,
No.
Connie Denham,
No.
Omar Gomez,
Aye.
JP Kaczynski,
Aye.
Dave Munier.
Motion passes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 yeses.
Yeah, motion passes.
What was the tally? Mr.
You have
President?
eight yes.
To 4, no, 8 to 5.
Yeah, motion passes. We're gonna move again to ranked choice voting because we end up with the questions.
Politely staying here for an hour.
We end up with the 5 minutes and we end up with having one question for each member of the,
Right, but
yeah, you have.
I had a further discussion on another matter that wasn't regarding ranked choice voting, but had to do with the preamble, the questions the statement read to the candidate, and which sort of sets the stage and asks certain questions be answered.
At the statement,
Yes, in reading to the, so I'd like to re-enter.
you want to make a motion to,
I would like to re-enter discussion on that.
About what?
so do you,
About
for the statement of the candidate, in those 5 minutes, you want them to touch a few points?
touch on certain points, and I think a uniform statement to the each candidate is something I'd like
Do
to
you have those points?
talk about.
Cindy did.
Cindy does.
The
I
chairwoman.
mean, sorry, Chairwoman
Chairperson.
Kuzinski.
That's okay.
I apologize.
That's all right. So you want me to read it?
Please.
So why are you interested in this position? And please discuss your thoughts about participating in the interim superintendent interviews. For example, what are you looking for in that candidate?
Any other points that you wanted the statement?
I want to say that I agreed with Maren that this is their biggest thing that they're going to do for the term that they're going to be in. And I think it's important to hear what they're interested in, what they're looking for in that candidate. So I would hope that that would kind of be an automatic in that 5 minutes, but I think allowing people to understand that you would like them to address that is a way of helping them out to focus their answers.
Councilor Rist?
I agree, if it could, but I would like it to be sent to the candidates prior to their statement so they have it prepared. In other words, if we decide on this to be what we would like the candidates to review, then it should be sent to them ahead of time, not stated right at the meeting.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Sarek?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would just want to suggest in that statement that it includes the words, "it is recommended that you," because as spoken to earlier, a candidate might have a very specific vision for why they want to run for school committee that frankly doesn't have anything to do with the superintendent search, or, I mean, I'm sure it would speak to why they want to be in school committee, but ultimately, as the point was making earlier, this is like running a campaign, running for election. Every candidate might have a different element or platform that they want to speak to. So I just wanted to put it out there that's recommended, that that's what this Congress is looking to hear, but that doesn't mean that we're not open to hearing other things.
Anyone else? Mayor LaChapelle?
I mean, I go back to Councilor Kwasinski's point that this is political, and it's not an HR or formal process. If a candidate wants to talk about the interim, I do agree with the chairwoman, but if the candidate chooses to use some of their 5 minutes, they do, and if they don't, they don't. So I'm just for like although the preamble makes some sense to me, I go back to it being political and making the case of why they want this. And further, we are a representative democracy, and folks have put trust in us to make those decisions based on what people are saying. So while the public is extremely, extremely, extremely important, every time we vote, we're voting and opting into a representative democracy. So a little high up there, but it's a tremendous responsibility, and probably why more people don't run for public office, but I do think it's a point.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else? Anyone want to make a motion, or only one question will be enough?
If
Councilor Rist?
Chairwoman Kwasinski would like to make that motion, I'd second it, a motion that, and you'd have to state what the
Wanna
opening
make a motion?
statement would be and give it to Barbara, because
Chairperson Kuzinski, you want to make a motion?
Yes.
You want to write it, just
Yeah,
in,
write
because
it down.
Barbara will need it.
Yep.
Thank you.
while she's doing that, why don't we do ranked choice voting?
Could I just ask for a little, so you're coming up with these things that you're gonna ask the candidates for. So I'm getting names in, and this meeting is like next week. I think these candidates, I need to know what I'm sending these candidates.
Yes,
And
that's
need
what
to
we,
send
that's what
it.
we're going to vote now. If
But no, I mean-
it fails,
No, I need to have specific, like, I want to make sure I'm sending the correct thing to the candidates.
yeah, and we're going there.
And I think as soon as I find out about
Yep.
them.
No, correct, no, we're getting there. Look like we're not, but we're getting there.
So should we
Do we want to do something else while she's ready?
No, she's almost done.
Oh, I'm almost done.
So then,
I just have a question about the process of this. Is that, can I ask this question?
ask.
So are we gonna give everybody their first 5 minutes and then go back and ask the questions? Because to me, it feels like the people who are at the end, if this is taking a long time, the community has not had the opportunity to at least hear the gist or the general bit of them, and that's gonna disadvantage people who are stuck at 3 a.m. talking.
Megan?
This was the question that I was trying to ask before we voted about the or the one question for each person. Is there a limit to how long they can spend answering each question?
Oh,
I think
wait a
just
minute.
that we didn't bring it.
There should be a limit.
I think we should have a limit. Yeah.
Could could we entertain a motion on that subject while we're waiting
Yes,
for? I move that any responses by the candidate be, that the candidate have up to a minute or less to answer each question.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to set up a 1 minute response for the candidate to respond to the convention. Any further discussion?
Is there a second?
Yes, we do have a second.
Brad, sorry.
Seeing none, Barbara?
Brad Riley,
Aye.
Dan Rist,
Aye.
Owen Zaret,
Aye.
Maren Goldstein,
Aye.
Megan Harvey,
Aye.
Ben Hersey, Cindy Kuzensky,
Aye.
Nicole LaChapelle,
Aye.
Connie Denham,
Aye.
Omar Gomez,
Aye.
JP Kaczynski,
Aye.
Dave Munier, Tom Peak.
Aye.
Motion passes. Chairperson Kuczynski?
So I'd like to make a motion that we ask each candidate at the beginning, why are you interested in this position? And please discuss your thoughts about participating in the interviews for interim superintendent. For example, what are you looking for in that candidate?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ben?
Are the candidates gonna get this question in advance? Yes.
We
If,
should.
yeah.
Okay.
Any other person? See none, Barbara?
Dan Rist,
Aye.
Owen Zaret,
Aye.
Maren Goldstein,
Aye.
Megan Harvey,
Aye.
Ben Hersey,
Aye.
Cindy Kuzensky,
Aye.
Nicole LaChapelle,
No.
Connie Denham,
Aye.
oh, you said,
She say
sorry,
aye.
I didn't hear you.
Aye.
Omar Gomez,
No.
JP Kaczynski,
Aye.
Dave Munier,
Aye.
Tom Peak,
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Motion passes. The word, Councilor Denham.
I just want to go back to my original point. I think it got sidetracked into
I
smaller answers, but
I didn't forget about that. Thank you. How are we gonna do the process? Are we gonna ask after the 5 minute statement? Or we gonna let everybody go through the 5 minutes and then we gonna start making the question? I like the idea of let everybody make the statement for 5 minutes, and then if we have questions for each individual candidate, then we call them to the podium to ask the questions.
but we stick with that particular person to ask all of the questions that are asked.
No.
So we wouldn't say, Brad, okay, well, now I have a question for Sally.
No.
So I just want to be clear about the
No,
rule.
we're gonna, if we have 5 candidates, all 5 will give us the statement. Everybody sit down. I will ask if anyone have a question for any particular candidate. As soon that candidate is at the podium, we make all the questions to that,
Okay, that's
and
what
that
I
will
want.
be over.
Okay, great, thank you for that clarification.
Everybody agree with that? And I don't need a motion for that. That's what we're gonna do. Councilor Kuczynski.
I was just going to nod agreement by raising my hair, give agreement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you asked for agreement.
No, that's fine. No, thank you.
That's how we
Councilor
vote
Sarah,
now?
you're good.
I,
All right, so now we can move to ranked choice voting. So, I'm so sorry.
Do we have to vote on that? Did we?
No,
Okay.
we just, no, we follow that process. I will follow that
Oh, okay,
process.
great, I just want to make.
Is Dan a co-host?
I mean, I don't want to prolong his
He's been
ability to speak.
be very patient with us.
Are you in the call?
Yes.
What's your name here?
Dan Gilbert.
He's right here?
Daniel
Left
Gilbert.
hand,
yeah.
well,
Let me see.
Am I able to share a screen?
That's what I'm looking at. Where is him?
He's going to give you privileges in just
I
a
got it.
second.
can tell.
There you go.
You're fading.
You're a co-host now.
Oh. My share button is gray. Hang on.
Let me see again. Daniel Gerber. You are a co-host.
Oh, there we go.
I'm sorry?
Can't share your screen.
I mean, I can remove you from co-host.
No,
I give you the co-host again.
I believe I need to restart Chrome.
All right.
I have to join again.
All right, well, will you do that?
Can we just go back and clarify what the three things that you just voted, just so everybody's clear?
You have the motion, what the motions.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. So, okay, there's a 5-minute statement.
5-minute statement.
That was the first one. The second one was one question per
Or-
person.
Yes.
And then.
With a limit of the,
1 minute or less.
Yes.
Those are the three.
yes.
Okay.
Also, the
And
The opening
And the
the opening
statement. And the
statement, you have to,
Yes, okay,
And that will be it.
okay.
So, before then, go again, let's go to the third.
I am
Oh, you
joined
got it,
now.
okay. I add you as a co-host again. So it's a committee's done.
Hey, look at that.
There we go. Wow.
Amazing.
I like that.
So I'm not going to use my computer audio. I'm just going to use the mic here. Can everyone hear and see what I'm sharing here? Okay, so this is roughly what it'll look like. I have random data.
Too small.
Can you
Yep.
put a little bigger? Thank you.
I don't know if you can make it bigger.
What was the request? Can I make it
Can
bigger?
you,
Really small.
it's small, so,
Expand the size?
can you expand it, like, no?
Go to the 100% there on the,
I think you have to get rid of the,
or so.
Change
If not, that was okay, like,
Yeah.
you know,
I
but that
think
was, they were
that's,
kind of small, that's why.
I don't think there's anything I can do, but I
But that's
think
fine.
people watching can make it
Yeah, that's fine.
bigger. Are you all able to see well
Yep.
enough? So I have random data that we're going to use for this example. So I'm pasting that in here now. You can see all of the voting members are listed along the top. All of the candidates, of which in this example there's 8, are listed along the left. They're alphabetical. So, for example, in this case, Councillor Denham's votes are in this column. Their first choice here being candidate Banana, second choice Endive. Does everyone understand generally how this is laid out?
Yeah.
So this would be, during the meeting, entered in from the individual paper ballots that each person would be voting with.
Is there announced publicly?
That way, those would be public. This document, when it's complete, would be public, and each person voting would be able to verify that their vote is correctly represented on this during the entire process. Okay. So then, once everybody's vote is in, and once everyone's vote is cast, they would then be entered in. Once they're all entered in, everyone would verify that it is indeed correct, and then we start tabulating. One thing I'll let everyone know is there's this row down here at the bottom that has little checks. If you happen to catch while I'm doing this that one of those isn't a check that looks like that, and it's not while I'm entering things in, put your hand up and say, hey, what is that? And these are just sanity checks to make sure, because it's always possible that you slip and put the wrong number in or something like that. Okay. So those are just to make sure that things are going smooth. You can see that all the ones are highlighted, and that makes counting a little easier. All right, so I'm going to start the process, and I'm just going to go through it exactly like it would happen when we're doing this, okay? So we're going to tabulate round 1. Candidate Apple has 0 votes. Banana has 2. Carrot has 2. Daikon has 0. Endive has 5. Endive or Endive, I don't know. Flower has 1. Grape has 3, and Honey has 1. Notice how once I've put in the totals for the entire round, there is a check mark down here. So that's another check to make sure that the numbers are sane and make sense. At the end of round 1, Apple has no votes and is eliminated.
So sad.
Daikon also has no votes and is eliminated. Okay? There are 2 candidates that are tied for the fewest number of votes at the end of round 1. So we look at their tiebreaker scores, and we eliminate the one with the highest. So candidate Honey has a higher tiebreaker score of 5.429 and is eliminated. Counselor Rists, now we highlight the highest active candidate on Counselor Rist's ballot, and we tally round number 2. Banana has 2 votes. Carrot has 2 votes. Endive has 5. Flower has 2. And Grape has 3. So now we see there are 3 candidates who are tied for the fewest number of votes. And so what we do, since this is not the first round, we look to the previous round to see what the vote totals are. Candidate Flower has fewer votes in the previous round and therefore is eliminated in this round. Kwasinski's ballot, we highlight the highest rank left, and Rist's ballot, we highlight the highest rank remaining. And then we tabulate round 3.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Sorry.
Absolutely.
Why Rist and Kwasinski?
Great question. When a candidate is eliminated, we go to any ballots that had that eliminated candidate as their vote. They then go to that person's next choice.
Their second.
That's right.
Yep.
Their second or their third or their, whatever the highest ranking continuing candidate is what it's called at that point. So that's the reason I'm calling them out, because that's what I'm doing and I'm narrating it.
Yeah.
But it's just a matter of those voters had their vote for an eliminated candidate. Okay. And that was their highest vote. So we go to the next one.
So like from 1 to 2?
Councilors,
1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, whichever one.
councilors, I will prefer if you raise your hand
Yep,
and be
that's my bad.
recognized so that way we can have a
That was
smooth
my bad.
meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, President Gomez.
Would you like me to
I'll keep
leave?
that in mind too. So now we tabulate round 3. Banana has 3, Carrot has 2, Endive has 6, Grape has 3. At the end of round 3, Carrot has the fewest number of votes and is eliminated. Derby's ballot gets highlighted, and Hersey's ballot gets highlighted. And we tabulate round 4. Banana has 3, Endive has 7, Grape has 4. Banana has the fewest at the end of round 4 and is eliminated. Denim is highlighted here. And then Rist is highlighted here. And Zaret is highlighted here. And we tabulate round 5. Endive has 8 and Grape has 6. At the end of round 5, Grape has the fewest number and is eliminated, and Endive is declared the winner. So that would be
Congratulations
the
to it.
first. That's the first
Ballots. Councilors, Rist.
So you're going to tabulate it twice because we have 2 candidates? Not that, what I thought was once you got to 2 candidates left, those were the 2 candidates.
No.
We're going to do this 2 times. But we're not going to vote twice.
Correct. I'm going to show you that right now.
Okay, thank you.
So
Before you keep going, have any questions?
And this is a distinction that was made, in Councilor Peak's presentation, there was a lot of content there, but, and if you have questions about the different ways that these things can be tabulated, but what we're what Councilor Peak has presented as sequential RCV is what I'm demonstrating here. So what I do in between is, Eric Ondive here is our first elected. And so they are marked in the second round here. This also, I would be doing this on a separate sheet, but we'll see this is seat 2 of 2. And now we simply start the process again, okay? Before I do that, I go through and I highlight the highest ranking candidate on each member's ballot that is still active.
So everyone.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
So to tabulate round 1, Apple has 2, Banana has 3, Carrot has 3, Daikon has 0, Flower has 1, Grape has 4, Honey has 1. Daikon has 0 votes and is eliminated. There are 2 candidates tied for last place with 1 vote each. Honey has a higher tie-breaking score and as a result is eliminated. Daniel Rist's ballot, we highlight the highest ranking continuing candidate and we tabulate round 2. Apple has 3, Banana has 3, Carrot has 3, Flower has 1, Grape has 4. Flower has the fewest number of votes in round 2 and is eliminated. Kwasinski's ballot, we highlight the highest ranking continuing candidate. Apple has, and then we tabulate round 3. So Apple has 3, Banana has 4, Carrot has 3, and Grape has 4. We have 2 candidates who are tied for the fewest number of votes at the end of round 3. So we look at the previous round. They are still tied in that round, so we go back yet another round and see that Apple has fewer votes in the first round, which means that they are eliminated in this one. Gomez, we highlight highest continuing candidate. David Munier, we highlight the highest continuing candidate. And Daniel Rist, we highlight the highest continuing candidate. And then we tally round 4. Banana has 5 votes, Carrot has 4 votes, Grape has 5 votes. At the end of round 4, Carrot has the fewest number of votes and is eliminated. We highlight, this is very repetitive, so thank you. On Derby's ballot, we highlight the highest continuing candidate. On Hersey's ballot, the highest continuing candidate. On Kwasinski's ballot, the highest continuing candidate. And on Munier's ballot, the highest continuing candidate. Then we tally, is there a question? No, okay. And then we tally round 5. Banana has 6 votes. Grape has 8 votes. Banana has the fewest number of votes at the end of round 5 and is eliminated. There's only 1 candidate remaining, and they are the winner, Gary Grape.
That was great.
So those are our 2 winners using sequential RCV. Eric Ondive is the first seat, and Gary Grape is the second seat.
Thank you. Mayor LaChapelle?
So the tiebreaker score, 1, where does that come from? And do you only use that in the first round because you don't have data to go back to?
Great question. Okay, fine. So I believe this is as per that Rule 8B that was adopted by the City Council. This uses the same procedure. So the tiebreaker score is generated as an average of all of the votes, the placements that have been received. In the event of a tie in any particular round between the 2 lowest ranking candidates, first we look to the previous round. If it's still tied, we look to the previous round. We continue to do that until we get to the first round. If it's still tied, then we look at the tiebreaker score. And whoever has the highest tiebreaker score is the person who's eliminated. If there's a tie for tiebreaker score, we draw lots.
That's a question?
Let's hope we don't go there.
No, it was excellent.
I hope so too, but if we need to, we'll know exactly what to do.
Right, exactly. No, thank you very much.
Councilor Peak.
one thing, the tiebreaker score is something we came up with in that particular case when we were dealing with only 8 people voting, because we really thought, with this random data, this happened a lot. In our experience when we do this, usually there's a few people that really stand out as strong candidates, but the idea of the tiebreaker score is that if there's 2 people who both got 2-3 votes, but one of them is everyone else's last choice and the other one is everyone else's second choice, then we want to privilege the person who was everyone else's second choice. Like that if in absence of any other data, we should go with the least divisive candidate. So that's the general idea. I do think that it doesn't say drawing lots. I think it says that if that concludes that at that point we basically have to just take a vote, like a head-to-head vote on, on how to proceed.
I couldn't remember if it's
so if we get to that point and we are actually just like hopelessly deadlocked, which I really again doubt will happen, at that point we do just jump into that. But yeah, that's the general. And then the other point I would just want to reiterate that I kind of just made was, this looks like a lot right now because of the data. It makes it such a spread. But when in our experiences, when there are things like this, it's usually like a few candidates stand out, and it's not quite. It rarely goes till round 6, but who knows? It could. We're prepared if it does.
Then Councilor Riley.
I just want to amend that. I was mistaken about that, and I would trust Councilor Peak's statement that it would go to just a vote of the council at that point.
Thank you. Councilor Riley?
I honestly, I just wanted to say thank you, Daniel. I think that there's a lot of confusion or misconceptions on what ranked choice voting can look like. And this was like a 10-minute masterclass in how it actually functions. And I just wanted to say thank you for doing this, because I generally had an idea of what it was going to be like, but this is as clear and transparent in real time. And so what you're suggesting is when we do this real time, it will actually look like this, and the people who are here or on Google Meets will be able to watch this document as we're tallying in real time?
Exactly like today.
Perfect. Okay, that's great.
Thank you. Councilor Rist?
Just a clarifying point. If in the first round, a candidate gets 8 votes, it's done, right? Just so that everybody knows, majority, done. We don't have to do any more rounds, because that means there's 8 votes, which is a majority of a 14-member committee. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't talk about thresholds at all here. The threshold is 8 votes, and you can stop at that point when somebody gets 8. It's not going to change anything if you keep going.
I know what you're going to say. Councilor Rist?
It's only 8 votes
Correct.
if there's 14 people participating.
Right.
And nobody abstains.
Right.
Which is, I'm wondering, how does an abstention, like, just hypothetically, I don't really know this candidate, I don't want to vote no, but is there a way for me to abstain from that candidate?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about this a whole bunch yesterday, and I believe that you can rank as many or few as you'd like, and it will still work. I was thinking at first that it for this particular tie-breaking method, it wouldn't be great, but after playing with it some more, I think it's absolutely fine if you want to allow people to rank fewer than 8 or fewer than the total number of candidates. It would be okay. Because it's an average, it's not dividing by the total number of voters, it's dividing by the total number of votes that candidate receives. Yeah, so I think that would work okay.
Councilor Denham?
So is the same true then for like second place? So if 8 of us said we want Barbara Banana as, which is totally fair, as the first candidate, and there was 8, and Calvin Carrot had 8 second votes, that's how that would play out then as well? Or does that shift that process?
Well, once that first candidate is elected and we do the second round, all of their first place, all of the people who voted for that person as their first place, it goes to their second choice. So in your example, yes, that is.
But we still have to.
You still have to go through the process.
Oh, yes.
But yeah,
Yep.
I'm just trying to understand that.
Councilor Kwasinski?
Question about the tie-breaking score and an abstention. The tie-breaking score is based on the lowest number you have being we're going to select that person to be the winner of the round. An abstention, how would that affect?
Well, I can show you on here.
Tiebreaker score.
Just point of
As
point of
opposed to a
process.
vote.
Councilor Peak?
Clarification. I think, well, we can change this, we can amend it, but the language that I had written asks everyone to rank all the candidates. So we can get into this if you want to amend that. If members feel that they don't want to be held to ranking all the candidates, then we can get into all of that. But for what it's worth, the proposal that based on our city council rules, I just really moved that over and changed counselor to member of the convention and did the multi-winner thing. And so in our council rule language, we ask people to rank all the candidates, and we ask them to do that here. If people don't want to feel held to that, we can get into all of this, but just for what it's worth, my proposal, that'll never come up.
I'm happy with that.
Anyone else? Councilor Sarek?
Just, Mr. President, that this slate of fruits and vegetables has a very finite shelf life, and if elected, we would have to be very careful to preserve them through the end of the term. That's all.
Anyone else?
How do you follow that?
I'm hungry.
Now I'm hungry.
You've been hungry.
Come on, councilors, we.
Council,
Come on,
make a
councilors.
motion, please. That's all I was going to
I know, councilors, please. Councilor Peak.
I would make a motion. Do you want me to read this whole thing?
No.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we use my filling multiple vacancies by special convention proposal, which is before all of you, with the one change that on the 4th line, the word counselor is replaced with member of convention. That's my bad.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just had one point.
Councilor
of clar-
Kuczynski.
Yeah, I have, yeah, thank you. The question was, now would be the time to talk about any abstentions if you felt that you weren't going to go all the way down the line. Just wanted to be sure everyone was aware we're voting on the requirement that we rank each and every candidate.
That's part of it, yeah.
Yep. Everybody clear with that? Any other one? Barbara?
Owen Jarrett,
Aye.
Maren Goldstein,
Yes.
Megan Harvey,
Aye.
Ben Hersey,
Aye.
Cindy Kuzensky,
Aye.
Nicole LaChapelle,
Aye.
Connie Denham,
Aye.
Omar Gomez.
Aye.
JP Kaczynski.
Aye.
Dave Munier.
Aye.
Tom Peak.
Aye.
Brad Riley.
Aye.
Dan Rust.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Dan, and thank you, Councilor Peak. Now, to finish the third meeting, we finished with the second meeting. The third meeting is only to vote. I will ask if the member of this convention want to have a public speak time in the last meeting.
No.
No, we don't have it. We're going to vote. Councilor Rist.
Just for the public who might be watching, open meeting law does not require us to have public speak. So I don't want you to get a lot of phone calls.
Yep,
Why not?
that's fine.
It simply we have a lot to deliberate, and public speak will make it difficult.
Thank you. Councilor Sarek.
But also for the public, just in between meetings, I want them to know that if they have candidates that they feel strongly about, they should reach out to counselors individually.
Member.
That's the same thing that you're going to say?
Members. Yes.
And the member of the
Congress.
convention.
My bad. I'm feeling fruity, I'm sorry.
Let me see. I think we covered everything that we have for tonight. We set up all the rules for every single meeting. Councilor Peak.
Will there be deliberation among us prior to the vote? Or do we just want to sit straight down and vote? I'm cool with either. I'm just kind of curious what
I prefer only voting, but it's up to the members of the convention what you guys want to do.
I'm fine with that.
Just voting? Yeah. Councilor Rest.
Yes, that's my name.
We have
Just as
14
was pointed
people.
out, I think it was by Councilor Kwasinski, we're making rules Rules can be changed if we have 25 candidates, for instance, we don't want to do one question. Or if at the night of the meeting, we decide we want to deliberate, we can decide at that point. So let's think about it, because we're all getting tired, and making decisions when you're tired is hard. Well, that's
good. Thank you. Before taking the motion to adjourn, I just want to clarify everybody that everybody's watching us, right? Today was kind of relaxed, and some counselors or some members was talking out of order without following the procedure. If we want the community to take us seriously, we have to take this process seriously too. And I'm encouraging everybody in this convention just to follow the rules. Please. The community is watching us. And this is the time to show them that we are the leaders. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Barbara?
Maren Goldstein?
Yes.
Megan Harvey?
Yes.
Ben Hersey?
Yes.
Cindy Kuzensky?
Yes.
Nicola Chappelle?
Yes.
Connie Denham?
Aye.
Omar Gomez?
Aye.
JP Kaczynski?
Aye.
Dave Munier? Tom Peak?
Aye.
Brad Riley?
Aye.
Dan Rist?
Aye.
Owen Garrett.
Aye.
Motion passes. Have a wonderful evening. See you, everybody. See you, Megan.